A really big thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video.
So good morning, ladies and gents, fellow photographers, welcome back to the channel. It's below freezing, it's beautifully still, it's clear. I think it's gonna be a good morning. Now during this morning's photo shoot, I wanted to talk a little bit about Aperture actually, quite specifically, because it's something that I've realised whilst I've spent the past few weeks really shooting predominantly handheld, and maybe goes against the grain a little bit, but I actually think this is really, really important, especially if you're a beginner at your photography. So I've chosen this morning's location really specifically because the weather forecast was showing fog in this very small specific location in the South Lake District. It's really close to home, so I figured it's going to be a lovely morning anyway. I was going to go out with the camera regardless. Let's head there and see what happens. And in the distance it's still really dark, but I can see a few little bits and bobs of mist, which is brilliant. It's all just going to be a bonus, you know. And this morning, I thought I'd let you know, early doors, we're going to be shooting with the Nikon Z7. Thought I'd take him out for a spin. We're heading up a pretty small hill called Gummers How. It's a bit of an old favourite, to be honest. It is a popular hill. A lot of you may have heard of it, but it's on the southern end of Windermere. It's a brilliant first hill if you've never been up any of the fells here in the Lake District, and I would highly recommend it. But I'm going to get a move on. It's not going to take me long to get up, but I do want to get up there before the sunrise so I can start thinking about the photography before it all starts kicking off. Just broken my OM system camera, my OM5. Look, I was just putting him on the tripod, which if you watch me regularly, I never do, but well, it was that tripod because I was using it to video me. That is a downer. Someone let me know if these base, no, it's not even the base plate, is it the whole base section of these OM5s, are they easily replaceable? Oh man, that is a downer. I dropped my cameras quite a lot, but I think that was the worst drop I've ever had. Look at the lens, that's where it landed, right there. Oh, you little rat. It was going to happen eventually. I was having a good run. So anyway, I'll deal with that later because this is a beautiful morning regardless. We've got the Nikon Z7. Gosh, what a good morning to bring out my other camera. That's lucky, you know, that's looking at it in a positive way, but this is just beautiful. The sun is up in about 10 minutes time and I'm already thinking telephoto lens, again, same as last week, but fingers crossed this mist down in the valley there sticks around and the light starts shining through it. Oh, fingers crossed indeed. Now let's get onto this subject of aperture. I think, and I've been guilty of this, a lot of the times landscape photographers can be so obsessed with this idea of always shoot at f11. And now when I'm saying that, what I mean is somewhere between f9 and f11 on a full frame camera, for example, is generally regarded as the sweet spot. What that means is you're going to get the best image quality, you're going to get the best out of your lens. Now I find honestly that although that's generally the best advice, is always try and shoot in that sweet spot on your lens, I feel like it can become a little bit of an obsession. And again, this is something that I've been guilty of over the years. I always prioritize my aperture. Now, when you're shooting on a tripod, which I've done for the majority of my photography career, it doesn't matter so much. I'm always dumping the camera on the tripod, putting it on f11 if I'm on the Nikon Z7, and then being done with it. Now I think for the most part the real issue is when you're shooting handheld, which is of course what I've been doing over the past month or so with my freshly broken OM5, and I've just noticed a lot that it can be quite difficult to try and prioritize that f5.6 as it is on the Micro Four Thirds or f11 on a full frame, because it's actually a really closed aperture, so it starts messing with the other two settings, your ISO and more importantly, your shutter speed. If you're shooting at f11 on a full frame, handheld, at this time of day when it's quite dark out, it could be quite difficult to get a quick enough shutter speed that you can use to shoot handheld. And I think therein lies the problem. So I'm just grabbing this little blue hour shot quickly. I need my gloves on, it's really cold. Oh, yeah, I'm just grabbing this blue hour shot quickly, and I actually think it's a really good example of what I've just spoken about with Aperture. Now, I am shooting this at f11, half a second, and ISO 64. So it sounds like I'm going against what I've just said, but it's because I'm using a tripod. So that gives me that freedom to shoot at half a second. There's no way I would shoot at half a second on the Nikon Z7. I would with the Olympus, it'd be fine. But on this, the image stabilization isn't quite good enough. Now, if I didn't have the tripod and I was just shooting handheld, I would have to manipulate my settings in a completely different way. And this is what I'm saying. In the past, I've always just obsessed with sticking my camera on f11 to start with, and then fixing the other settings after that. Whereas in this sort of case, after I've had a little bit of experience of shooting handheld out in the real world, I have to prioritize my shutter speed. So I know the Nikon Z7, personally, I wouldn't shoot below 1/30th of a second. I just wouldn't do it. The image stabilization isn't good enough. And of course it depends on your camera. Do some tests at home. How is your image stabilization? How still can you hold the camera? You know, these are all very important variables. So I'd probably put the camera on 1/50th of a second just to be sure. And then I would manipulate my aperture and my ISO after that. Wow, so the sun's just coming up now. It is beautiful. I'm gonna grab this shot just because we've got the light hitting these rocks now down in the foreground. Oh, it just looks so beautiful. And for me, even after everything that I've just said, I have of course got the luxury of the tripod this morning, so I am shooting at f11. Absolutely obsessed with f11, this lad. ISO 64 and it's 1/4 of a second. So again, you can see, even though it's got a little bit lighter, I still wouldn't want to shoot that handheld. So I would manipulate my aperture if I wanted to shoot this at handheld, if I didn't have the tripod. But wow, that mist is beautiful. This is going to be a nice little image to start off the morning. So the sun is fully up now over the horizon, looking absolutely gorgeous. And all I'm going to do now is, like I said, just wait for the sun, the light rays to start hitting all of this mist, and then I will start zooming in with the 24-200 lens and yeah, really just get stuck into some telephoto photography, because I think that's where it's at. You know, it's a really undeniably beautiful morning, but there are no clouds. So even some of these mountains, looking back here towards some of the southern fells, I just don't think there's any shots because there's no interest in the sky. Even with the long lens, it'd be very difficult for me to get an image because, well, I just find it beautiful, but uninteresting for the photography. So it's another one of those mornings, again, same as last week, where I think it's just gonna pay to stay pretty much in the same spot here. Use the telephoto lens. The light, as you may be able to see right off in the background at the top end of the fog, is just starting to hit it all now. Oh, it's looking really beautiful, but yeah, there really is no need for me to move around. I might move around this hill slightly just to try and get a few different perspectives, but this is the place to be. And I think once that light gets into all of that mist, it's going to be lovely. Now, there's another side to this whole aperture thing that I was just thinking about that I also think is worth mentioning. So it's misty right back up at the northern end of Windermere as well. It's just beautiful. So what was this? So everything that I've spoke about Aperture so far is talking about reasons why you should open up your aperture a little bit, shoot at lower f-stop numbers to, for the most part, get a quicker shutter speed. avoid having to increase your ISO, all that stuff I think is really important. I hope you understand all of that. But then there's the other side. When would you close your aperture even more? And again, this is something that I think a lot of landscape photographers just avoid. It's something that I've avoided for a long time. There's instances that I can think of where I've just thought, oh, I don't want to come out of the sweet spot. It must be f11 all of the time. And that is when you actually want a longer shutter speed. And when do we want a longer shutter speed? When we want long exposures, of course. And you know, you might be shooting a little stream, you might be photographing a waterfall, and you want a specific shutter speed. You want half a second, very specifically. But it's a little bit too bright, and you might not have neutral density filters. So shooting at f11, because that's what you're obsessed with, same as me, you might only be getting a shutter speed of, say, I don't know, 1/15th of a second, 1/30th of a second, and it's just not quite cutting it. But if you then stop down to f18, even f20, you get that shutter speed of 1/2 of a second. So again, it's about prioritizing shutter speed, other parts of the exposure triangle, rather than just always trying to prioritize that sweet spot. If you shoot at f20 and you get that milky look in the water exactly like you want, in my opinion, that is well better than shooting at f11 and then getting a shot that's taken at 1/30th of a second and you don't like the look of the water when you get it home in post-production. For me, that's just daft. And here's the thing, personally, from my own experiences, I've never noticed a drop in image quality if I'm going to like f18, f20, f22. Sometimes I do it to try and get sunstars as well. You know, if you want a really nice clean looking sunstar, generally with your wide angle lens, you've got to go down to like f16, f18, and yeah, I've never noticed any of this diffraction or poor image quality or anything like that. For me, the priority would always be the sunstar, for example, or the long exposure effect of the water. So the sun's taking a good old while just to come over the hills there, and I reckon still another 10 or 15 minutes before the light starts hitting that mist. I've got a feeling that my expectations are too high again, but we will see. Whilst we're waiting, I'd love to say another massive thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. So if you've never heard of them, Squarespace is an all-in-one platform that you can use to build your own website, which is exactly what I did since before I was sponsored by them, and I'm really proud of my Squarespace website. And the main thing is, the best thing is about them is they make it so easy. We're slowly coming into the new year. You might have a dream to have your own website. I would highly recommend them. They've got loads of templates that you can use to get yourself up and running. You add a bit of text, a few images, and before you know it, your site will be up and running. It is well easy. If, like me, you'd like to sell stuff through your Squarespace website, you could do that as well. They've got plenty of wonderful e-commerce packages, and I sell prints, ebooks. I advertise my one-to-one workshops on there. I sell my calendars. I've got a very small select few of those left, by the way. And as I always say, I wouldn't be able to run my business without it. So if you wanted to sell some prints to give it a go, you could do that with Squarespace as well. And finally, last but certainly not least, they have got wonderful customer service. So if you need a little bit of a hand whilst you're building that website, they will be there. Trust me, I use that customer service and it is brilliant. It's actually award-winning. Fantastic. So if you'd like to give them a go, head over to squarespace.com/Henry Turner and make sure you use the offer code Henry Turner at checkout for 10% off your first purchase. There'll be a link in the video description below and you'll get a 2-week free trial through that link, so you've not got anything to lose. So the light is just taking forever. It's not, I mean, it's still hitting that top end of the mist back there, but it's not in the right place just yet. I'm taking an image that is not going to have any of the light in it because it's a little bit too close to us, but I still think it's going to be lovely. Right off there on the left hand side as the hills fall down into the fog, it's just really nice, and by the time you've zoomed in with that telephoto lens, it looks really dramatic, actually very, very dramatic, even without the light. So that's the final image, the one that I'm most happy with, let's say. But yeah, that was zoomed in 200mm on the 24-200 and shot at 1/15th of a second. f11, of course. Of course, because I've got the tripod, but yeah, still waiting around for this light. It won't be long. Oh wow, so it's all slowly starting to happen just about now. We're getting the light exactly where we want it. I just grabbed that shot there, which I'm really liking the look of on the back of the camera. Obviously very abstract. I love the way the light's sort of dancing on the top of the image, and we've just got this mound that's sort of breaking up all of that fog, because it's really thick, like it is, the fog is so thick, but it's starting to like loosen up ever so slightly now, I guess, as the light is burning it off. Oh, it looks wonderful. And this is the moment, this is it. We're starting to get the trees protruding up through the mist now. Oh, this is absolutely wonderful. So I'll show you what I'm doing here from the view of the Nikon Z7. Obviously that's really wide. That sort of image there, I just find really boring. It's the sort of image I may have took 4 or 5 years ago, you know, nothing particularly wrong with it, just doesn't excite me that much. But as we zoom in with the telephoto lens, look at this now. And we've got the light in there as well. Oh, like that sort of image there where we've got the layers and layers of all the trees. And then that's the mound that I photographed earlier. So you can see, oh wow, things are starting to properly open up now. In fact, as you can probably tell there, probably got another 5 minutes before the light starts hitting all these sorts of areas where we've got all them trees sticking up through the fog. Man, this is wonderful. So I'm just grabbing a photograph here that I think is going to be the pick of the bunch so far. Things could get better. It's so good now, man. Oh, it's so good because the mist is starting to break up, like I was just saying, and the light is well and truly in the thick of it. Gosh, man, we've had some conditions recently. We've had some luck. Mind you, it's probably been evened out by the OM5 smashing to pieces, but that was my fault. Anyway, again, 200 millimeters. I'm zoomed right in to where all of the action is with that light and that mist as it plays with each other down there in the center of the valley. It is wonderful. We've actually got a few buildings as well. We're shooting down towards Fellfoot Park on the southern end of Windermere. Beautiful little area. And I actually would usually avoid the buildings, but they're giving the image a little bit of scale, and yeah, I really like that. So I'm just going to grab another one now, because I think the light is a tiny bit better even. Top draw, man, top draw. So this is what it's all about for me. Long lens, beautiful light, the interplay of the light and the fog, fairly abstracty sort of images. I just don't think it gets any better than this. This is incredible. Up on a fell. I tell you what a way to see the day in. This is brilliant. Now I was just thinking, these sorts of photographs where we're using the telephoto lens, fairly abstract, you know, really zoomed in, are another good example of when you really don't need to be worrying about aperture that much. I am shooting these at f11 once again because I've got the tripod. I might as well stick it on f11, but if I was handheld, I'd have no problem taking these photographs at whatever the widest open is on this lens, f4. If it was an f2.8 lens, I'd stick it on f2.8 if it meant I was getting a quick shutter speed to make sure the image wasn't blurry, you know. There's no real depth to these photographs at all. Now, I'm going to talk you through an image I've just got that, again, I think it might take the top spot. It might be the best one of the morning yet. So right off in the distance, it's probably the furthest section of the fog away from us where it meanders round. That's lingering just above the River Leven, and that has been the best spot to zoom into for the past 5 or 10 minutes or so. And what I've done is actually I've stuck the Nikon Z7 in the DX mode, the crop sensor mode, just to give me a little bit of extra reach. I could easily just crop the full frame image in post-production, but I quite like the crop sensor mode on the Z7 because I just prefer to like compose the image in the here and now, you know, rather than sort of amend it in post-production. But yeah, we've been zoomed right in. We're still at around about 1/15th, 1/20th of a second, something like that. f11 and ISO 64, and I'd call this sort of image a little bit of a wider telephoto scene. Even though we're as far zoomed in as possible, we've got the equivalent of 300mm here, I think it just feels like there's a lot in the frame, and it's probably a little bit less abstract than the shots we were getting earlier of the mound that was just peeking up through the fog. Basically, there's a lot more landscape in the photograph. So rather than bore you, I suppose, I feel like I might bore you continuing to take the same shot over and over again. I shall leave it there. If I take any more photographs that I like, which I'm going to assume that there's going to be at least one more, I will put it up at the end here. But thank you so much for tuning in to this video. Please drop a comment below. What's your opinions on everything that I've spoken about Aperture? Do you always feel like you need to shoot at f11 and things like that? And if anybody knows where I can get a base plate for my OM5, please do comment below, because I don't fancy sending it off to get repaired, because I'm sure it'll be away for ages. Anyway, thanks again, ladies and gents, and I shall see you on the next adventure. Out!